Welcome to Pachamama Sacred Paths podcast. This podcast was created with the purpose of informing and sharing ancient ancestral wisdom relating to shamanism and sacred plant medicines, as well as other modalities of spirituality. Our mission is to share a safe and reverent understanding for anyone who is interested in healing and growing through shamanism, sacred plant medicines, Hinduism, and silence. If you would like to experience firsthand the pragmatic transformation that shamanism has to offer, please visit our retreats page, pachamamasacredpaths.org, at asimo.org, or you can click on the link appearing on the screen or go to the comment section below.
Hello everyone, welcome to Pachamama Sacred Paths first podcast episode. We want to welcome you. My name is Andres Villa.
And I'm Sabrina Davis.
And we want to welcome you to our first episode where we're going to introduce the podcast to you and to all of the listeners of these podcasts, of course. My name is Andres Villa. I am your host, and I am the Pampa Misayo leading all of the retreats and all of the ceremonies for Pachamama Sacred Paths. And the purpose of this podcast is going to be to inform who is it that we are, what do we do, and also give you a little bit of an introduction to what's to come in the podcast. And so starting off, we'd like to introduce myself and Sabrina. And I wanna just tell you a few things about Sabrina. She's a very, very good friend of mine. She's also my partner in the church. She's the CFO for all of the background operations that happens in the church. And so she's a minister, and she leads some of the silence portions of the retreats. And she's been an integral part of helping us put the church on wheels, right? Like getting it on the road and making things happen. Very, very grateful with her for all of the things that we've been going through together. And so we'd like to introduce you, Sabrina. What would you like to share to us on this podcast?
Thank you, Andres. Wow, I guess I can talk a little bit about what I think maybe the last 3 years, my life has changed from being 100% 9 to 5. That was my focus, to now working in the church. And it was a lot more than 3 years that it took for me to get to that place of being ready to move into a more whole life. And I think, like many people, all of our issues that we live with and our problems that we have and the ways that we feel about our life, the way we feel about our work, the way we feel about our partners and our children and all of that, all comes down to what we were taught. And that realization, occurred to me in layers, I think, over my lifetime, and, started getting more pronounced and less easy to ignore in the last 8 years. And then, as the snowball goes, you find yourself in a position where you're exactly where you wanted to be your whole life, and you just didn't know where that was. Mm-hmm. So I started off, I'll try to keep it brief, but, you always start at the beginning. I was born to a family in a very orthodox, pseudo-Christian belief structure. And I'd talk about what they were, but I don't want to come out of the gate with it because a lot of people have prejudice against the religion I was born into. But I honor actually a lot these days of the belief structure that I was born into, the morals and the foundation of materialism and selflessness, the what really matters is love, kind of mentality, was at the foundation of what I was raised with. Yeah, so yeah. I see the beauty in that. I see it every day, and it took me a little while to actually come to that realization that I can think something that I used to for my whole life look back on and be like, oh, why did they do that to me? Why did life do this to me? And now I have some reverence for that experience and really appreciate some of the foundations that are there, along with some of the foundations for resilience. You know, we talk about trauma and, you know, being abused or being, you know, anything, you know, from that period in your life, early childhood, really right into adulthood, any traumatizing experience. And, you know, we have those experiences as you know, that I think those as well, they make me resilient and they help me see life and everything from different perspectives. I don't discredit someone who has a very narrow perspective. Other than I would just say, you know, keep in mind that there are other perspectives, even if your view of the world is very narrow. You know, being aware that there's other perspectives is is great.
Yeah.
So the more, I guess, the more for every layer of trauma, there was definitely always a layer of additional spiritual growth, and that's, I think, you know, the path that my life has been on, or that the path I've been on. My life, like, it's separate from me. That's the path I've been on for a really long time. And when I think about the moment that I had just thrown my hands up with trying to be something different or do something different, was, I mean, the last time, and I say this with caution, I don't want it to become a, you know, death talk, but it was the last time I tried to end my life. And that was, you know, a moment when I realized that I didn't want to keep trudging along this mysterious path. I kind of didn't see the point.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, that moment where I really did just kind of, I didn't give up. I just turned it over. I'm like, well, let me, you know, I have no idea where I'm going. So I'm going to go along for the ride, because I'm going to start doing what I want to do. I'm going to start doing what feels like I should do, or what feels right, not what I should do, but what feels right for me. And when I started listening to that
spiritual rock bottom moment.
It was a very rock bottom moment where I was really done trying to do it other people's way, because, you know, and it was when I started considering, why am I doing this? Why am I doing anything? Every single moment of every single day, I'm asking myself, what is my purpose? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And I liken that to, I mean, there's Stephen Covey is one of my favorite authors. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Actually, that's the only book of his I've ever read, but it was such an impactful book. But he, you know, it's beginning with the end in mind, and then seek first to understand, then to be understood, like all sorts of, you know, things that I've used in my life to really just be okay with who I am and where I'm at. So, yeah. So that, I mean, I was in business. I've been a business professional for 25 years. Somebody told me that was a fast way to make money in college. I originally started out, I know, I was going to do psychology, and then found out that you had to do 4 years of postgraduate school. And I was like, forget it. I'm dead. I need money now. And so I ended up going, I was really good with the numbers, really good with accounting, really good with strategy. And so I went into finance, ended up doing corporate finance for a long time. And I'm really glad to be out of that scene of, you know, very much always about making or saving money. So it's beautiful for me to transition now into a different type of business that is, you know, a little bit more service to the public, I guess. You know, and I say that also kind of hesitantly, because businesses all contribute to the society and the public, and they all have their part. So, yeah, so I'm trying to think if there's anything major I left out. I just recently, I suppose in the last 3 years, I've engaged with sacred medicine. I hadn't before that, and I've had an incredible journey through Alcoholics Anonymous with self-exploration for a solid 7 years. Very dedicated to that community. I still am grateful for them, the work that they do, and the program that they've kept alive for the last 75 years. So a very credible program that does a lot of good for a lot of people. So, and I would be doing a disservice to myself if not to acknowledge that program really kind of opened me up to being, I mean, that whole idea of God being whatever God is to me,
Mm.
and that was okay, and that there were other people that also felt that was okay. That came from them. So when I gave everything up,
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the first things that was after that attempt on my own life.
Mm-hmm.
That was the community I was introduced to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was the day I got out of that hospital, and that was where I landed, in a place that was telling me I needed to stop trying to make God something bigger than, you know, bigger than I could possibly touch. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So 5 years, 6 years into that transition from that shift in my life, and I still didn't quite know where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
But I somehow landed 3 years ago in a sacred medicine circle with you, and then I, you know, was oddly and strangely felt called to spend more time around you, and so here we have it. I mean, I think it took us a little while to. I think I had a lot of processing to do in my time, and I know that you had a lot to figure out as well, with what these ceremonies would look like, and
Mm-hmm.
how what the format would be and what works best. And you've done an incredible job with the structure of this belief system that we have. So I would say from here, Andreas, I think your story is probably more amazing than I could summarize anymore, but I'd love to hear why you do what you do. Tell us about you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of those, you know, details. I really wasn't aware of a lot of what you said, and it's so good to continue knowing each other in such ways. Yeah, for me, a lot very very similar to you. You know, like I had my share experiences of, you know, despair and confusion, where the logical option was to pull the plug a few times, and but for the most part, I think that it has been until much later, through the work of the medicines, that I came to realize that my personal path began at a very early age for me. Growing Catholic, my mom was super devoted, still is. I don't think I know anyone that meditates more than her. And so she introduced me, to devotion, and I had a very very special connection from a very early age with, different beings. Obviously Jeshua, but also Mother Mary, and introduced me to, the love, the feminine aspect of the divine, and yeah, a few other things. Right, it was so deep for me back when I was a kid. Being from I think like 8 to 11, I was the priest helper, and I never experienced any craziness with a priest, any abuse or anything like that. Thank God. Yeah, but it was,
Phew.
but it was a very very interesting path that I was called to. However, I was a little rebellious, with a lot of the concepts, and I wasn't always, you know. Uh, shutting up when they told me to not ask questions about dogma and things like this. So, but that's when I first, recognized that my path and my relationship with spirituality began. And then from there, I had the teenage years were very very similar to the general population. Girlfriends, friends, parties, some drugs, and it got actually pretty heavy on the drug taking when I was in the years of college. And but always looking for something, right? Always looking to explore. And even on those moments, I wasn't really that crazy party guy. That I was, taking some psychedelics back then, but it was always an introspection journey for me. So, and there was a group of us that had that same mentality. We were, from an early age, we were reading Friedrich Nietzsche, and a few other, philosophers of mind like-minded type of theories and ideas. So, but for me, like I transitioned from college to work, And then when I was working, I came from Texas. I finished the 4 years in Texas, and then I came here to California in 2006. And then I worked, and I just enjoyed making money. I was a sales manager for Toyota, and then I had my own car dealership with three silent partners, and it was great. I had a lot of freedom. I had a lot of money for a 26-year-old, and comparatively, of course. And then I was happy. And then when I had my son Andres when I was 29, that's when something happened for me. Because even though I had life was alright for me, I had this understanding and this awareness of myself that I wasn't always happy. Life was okay, and money helped a lot not to be stressed and worried about tomorrow and things like this. But at the same time, I was aware of quote unquote demons, right? And I say quote unquote because at the moment I thought that I had like these beings and energies that would influence me and trigger my anger or trigger my rage. And so I was an angry kid. I grew up in a home with a little bit of violence and experienced some trauma, and so not knowing how to work with all of that, I carried it over, right? And I started actually growing even more to bigger levels than what I experienced when I was a kid. And so when I was 29, I consider myself very, very smart, but at the same time I had no control over my emotions because of these beliefs that I had some influences affecting, right? And so that was a little bit of my state of mind back then. And so when my firstborn, when Andres was born, my son Andres was born, he, I experienced for the first time something, so pure. And so I experienced a moment of true innocence and divinity when I saw him, come out of my wife's womb. And, for the first time in my life, I was in shock. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I was like paralyzed, and it really shook me. But what shook me was a recognition that I didn't have it within me at that moment. I didn't have the skills or the space within myself to protect, that innocence, that purity, that divinity that I saw. And my mom, was with me at the hospital. My dad had traveled from Mexico to be here for his first grandson being born, and I was with them, and I come out of the room, and they say, how is he, and everything's great, and so, but I remember, like, I started crying, and what's going on, is everything okay? He's like, yeah, but I'm really afraid. I'm really afraid that I will fuck this up, that I will mess his life up, and I was really, like, genuinely afraid and scared and sad. So all of those emotions, were like swirling around so deeply, and they recognize that. Now in retrospect, I can see that they recognize those moments, that particular moment, and they cried with me. They try to cheer me up. It's like, don't worry about it, but I could. My dad was crying, and she was crying also, and they were like the voice of reason and logic. It's like, don't focus on the bad stuff. Keep looking forward. But they could really understand because they were 17 and 18 when they had me. So it was the same thing, not knowing how to deal with all of your emotions and at the same time be a good parent. But what happened for me in that moment, even though I really couldn't focus on anything else, is I prayed for the first time in maybe like around 15, 20 years. And so I not knowing if there was anything up there or outside, I said, like, if you exist, I need some help. And it was genuine from the heart and from the mind. And then a few months after that, I had an episode where I went into unintended fasting, and I experienced 30 days of being just sustained with knowledge. Just I was very, very deep into Christ consciousness teachings by a channeler that we will explore as part of the podcast. And it's anonymous. It's an anonymous text, and it changed my life. It really gave me a glimpse of what it could be being in a space of love and a really high vibration. And then from there, I came down. After those 30 days, something started to happen where I started experiencing again fear, and I started. So for 30 days, I was in this space of like enlightenment. If there's, as cliche as it sounds, I was like floating around and speaking to different beings and angels and listening to people's thoughts and things like this. It was really, really quite an amazing thing. If I wasn't, uh, experiencing it from the, anybody would have said that I should belong in a funny house, like, or see a psychiatrist at the very least. But I was having a very profound experience of awakening, right? And it was such a shift in vibration that when I started to gradually come out of that, I started feeling fear, and the fear with the fear came the old patterns of lying, and I had some patterns of manipulating truth, you know, and being angry and being resentful and all of these things, right? Like I had a lot of work to do. Then that I began. That's when the work really began. It was like a big, huge 30-day aha moment, and then after that, it was a process of understanding how is it that I can get back into those levels of understanding and awareness of myself. And then my search began. I got really deep into Hinduism for 7 years, and then since 2013, I started doing sacred medicines. I did my first retreat. It was an overnight ceremony in downtown San Jose,
Wow.
very dense, yeah, and with a teacher that we'll have as an we'll invite her into the podcast, and so I had this amazing first encounter with Mother Ayahuasca, and then from there it just continued. The next month I had the second one, and then the week after the second one I had my fourth one I had it on my own, and then I started getting into different types of medicine, Padre Sapo, Jape, Sananga, different types of ayahuasca, chaliponga, and whatnot. All of them, Niños Santos, and so that's how my path began, and it started, little by little. It started giving me insight and awareness, but the insight and the awareness wasn't really changing much for me. So that's when I found a teacher, and that was my very first. I wouldn't. I cannot say my very first. It was one of the deepest teachers that I've had, and he introduced me to the Keto tradition, which we're gonna talk a lot about in the podcast. And the Ketos from the Andes is the priests from the mountains, and so I had a really beautiful experience of embodying some of the insight that I had. Already had a lot of knowledge, but it was just concepts. And then gradually, with some of the practices of the kettle, I was able to gradually start to embody little by little some of the wisdom. And embodying the wisdom brings change in temper, change in space within ourselves to start perceiving things a little bit different, and have a tangible say, meaning like I have a say into what I feel, I have a say into my thoughts. And so that started to happen, and now it's been about 4.5 years that I've been exposed to this and working fully. It's like about 3 years since I've worked with initiation, and we're gonna talk. This is gonna be one of the things. So, but in a nutshell, this is a little bit of my background. I know it was a little more than what we said we were gonna talk about each other, and I apologize for that.
That's okay.
But yeah, so this is so what we're gonna talk about in the podcast is gonna be, each week we're going to talk about different subjects that both you and I are familiar with, sacred medicines, and different types of shamanism, different type of belief systems in the field of spirituality, like Hinduism, Course in Miracles. Um, I don't know. You probably know better than I do what are going to be some of the subjects that we're going to be reviewing.
Well, I know that a lot of the subjects that we're going to be reviewing have some preconceived notions or perceptions of, some maybe not so understanding or not so transparent sources. And I think mainly of, what we hear less and less these days, we're seeing more acceptance and more, I guess, integration of the more earth spiritualities. Some of the very ancient and deeply natural spirituality. So it'll be interesting to kind of explore those perspectives too, which was, kind of the way I was brought up, that all that's hoodoo and voodoo, and you can't pay any attention to it, and that's but it's what we're, it's a big portion of what we talk about is that energy movement. So just the broad spectrum of topics that we're going to have just in sacred medicines, and what sacred medicines can do to help you become aware of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you see things that aren't there, right? And I've seen this before. It's not that you hear things. It's not you think things that aren't there already. They're already part of it. It's just medicine helps you to be a little bit more aware of what's going on in there. All the different backgrounds and that I am horrible about remembering names of things. So I'm so grateful I know you, Andres, because in a lot of these conversations I'd be like, yeah, that one. Like there's so many so much religious history where some of the origins of these beliefs came from, and how they were dissected and changed up and mutated into what they are today, or evolved, depending on what word you want to use, into what we have today, and in so many different forms. And then you look at the unification that we have between the Kero tradition and the Hinduism at the Church of Pachamama Sacred Paths, and it's an incredible match. The beauty of seeing those two belief structures come together in such harmony is pretty incredible and hard to ignore. So
and it's a way to reconcile for me. It has helped a lot that I studied, for so deeply and so for so long, all of the practices of Advaita Vedanta, and studying some of the Gitas, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ashtavakra Gita, and the yoga certifications and classes, and so all of the things that I've done, they certainly have put things into perspective. But once we start applying it on a day to day, rather than it being just knowledge from a book, it has been so beautiful to put away all of the differences, and so all of the separation of who's right, which tradition is right, and which one's wrong, and why. All of that division only exists in our mind and in ourselves, based off sometimes some attachment. It's like, oh, this sounds good, it feels alright, and they're talking about the same in every single religion, except maybe some of the Bible verses saying that angels killing babies and stuff like that. That gets so out of context sometimes that it's kind of hard to reconcile. But even then, if we can take off division in between, the message, we can look beyond the words, then it's the same mountain. It's a
well, and I wonder
thank you.
In Christianity, as you mentioned, with with these angels killing babies, you wonder when you look back at and I know you also grew up in the Bible, one of the Christian
Sure.
Branches, and when you look back at the Bible, you have to wonder, the same way that we talk about archetypes and the different deities within Hinduism and the archetypes in the Kero tradition, like you start kind of seeing it from a different perspective when you look at texts like the Bible or the Quran, and you start seeing, those same archetypes are talked about in there, and that the story about the angel that killed the baby is really just a story about the archetypes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's really understanding how these stories is, in the way that I feel and the way that I see things, which are those babies and which are the angels, and what is it that I am. There's a lot of wisdom that it can feel very, very straightforward and edge cutting. For example, it says one of the Kero wisdom point says, "Kill that which kills you." And so that's pretty straightforward, right? But in the way that sometimes they explain it, it can be also with metaphor and parables and things like this. So it's really looking beyond the words into how is it that I am going to apply this wisdom for myself, and have a real moment with my energy, have a real moment with my feelings and my thinking. And so that's the practical aspect of what we're going to explore. And but also I'm pretty happy to explore some of the a little bit more attractive topics. It's like past life regressions, being able to know who is it that I was in a previous life, and which patterns do I carry now from past lives, and other things. Exploring time and space, exploring patterns, rituals. That's going to be a really beautiful one, and we're going to have special guests. We're going to have some special guests, and for different subjects, right?
Well, I think yes, and there's all the different topics that we've even listed out here within the Karo tradition, within the Hinduism, within other sects. I think you probably know quite a few people in those rounds. Um, the interesting piece too that we get to talk about is the legal proceedings that are going on. So with the legalization of sacred medicines in so many parts of the country, and then you have organizations that are also working toward federal, I guess, legalization at a certain,
Reform.
at least of a certain degree. Something that would make certain sacred medicines legal. So that whole,
Hmm.
I guess, movement,
Yeah.
as we say, that movement towards not outlawing native, and native is such a general term, not outlawing the traditions of the Americas, and really in most of Europe too. I think we know that there were sacred mushrooms pretty much on every continent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to be a part of that as well. Which is, I think, a conference call that we were on with Shakruna,
Mm-hmm.
and the work that they're doing. And so it'll
Yeah.
be good to explore those
Mhm.
topics as well with some people on the call.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we're gonna have a lot of fun exploring all of the world of sacred plants, but also integration of the wisdom that comes sometimes from sacred plants. Knowing different perspectives of spirituality. So it's going to be a very inclusive podcast, and I don't know about you, but I'm really excited to begin in next week.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited to get into the details and just talk about it. And honestly, Andreas, I get to sit here and chat. I get an hour and a half where I get to, or an hour, I suppose, of just you and me talking on a
Yeah, no, right.
video call. I feel spoiled.
With
It's
a
awesome.
with a few guest speakers that
Right.
will have an exception to those podcasts. But yeah, no, I know we're gonna be connecting every week, and every week is gonna be on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. And we invite you guys. Invite everyone to be a part of it. It's gonna be an interactive, so we're gonna be going back and forth with the questions. It's gonna run on a few different platforms: Facebook Live, Instagram, YouTube, Vimeo, but also in a few different podcasts that is just audio podcasts, Apple Podcast and Google Podcast and a few other platforms. So yeah, we invite you guys to visit our website. We're in the middle of constructing our first retreat center, and we're getting the yurts by the end of the month. We ordered 5 yurts, and we're going to be posting. If you want to keep track of what is it that we're doing, please subscribe to our mailing list, and we can send you updates on all of the events. The building of the kitchen, the pool, and a few other things that are taking place right now as we speak. And we invite you guys to be a part of it, to contribute, whether it is a donation or you want to be a part of what we're building. And if you resonate with the teachings, reach out, so you can also be a part of the initiation courses, some of the breathwork practices that we join, and can be part of the community as well. We invite everyone, and yeah, so that's what our podcast is going to be about. And do you have anything else that you would like to share, or you want to add?
Oh, I was just thinking there are so many ways to get involved with our community, whether, I mean, you can check it out on edestimo.org or on pachamama.sacredpaths.org. Like you said, there's just so many things right now going on in our organization. It's fun to be a part of it, and just check it out. There's lots of opportunities for anybody that wants to help out or start on the path with us. So.
Yeah, you can click on the links on the corner, or you can look at the links on the comment section below on the podcast sections. And with that, we want to say thank you guys. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for being a part of this community. Anytime you'd like to reach out, we're always available. And thank you so much. Have a
Thank
great
you, guys.
afternoon. See you guys next time.